public forum, which is quite full today. Some members, the mayor and staff are coming to our meeting of Vincent Community Board on the 2nd of May. We're going to start with apologies. We've received one for Tane Alley. Does somebody want to move? For Roger, second, Tracy, all in favour? Against? Carried. Right, so we'll move on into the public forum. We're quite full today, so just a reminder that you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and then we'll have questions from members. From members, please make sure we keep it on topic, because there are quite a few to get through. So our first today, we've got Mike from Otago Cricket on Teams.
You're on mute.
Is that better?
Thanks.
Thank you. Can I be heard now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to submit to the Vincent Community Board and the Central Otago District Council. Much appreciated. You've got the submission in front of you. For at least the next 3 years, Television New Zealand has secured the television rights to broadcast all home, international and all 64 matches of domestic T20 cricket, Super Smash cricket for the next 3 years. This is an absolute game changer for cricket and for all business and organisations associated with broadcasting of domestic cricket. Now, under the previous Spark Sport deal, and with less than 40% of matches viewed free to air, and inside the last 3 years, domestic cricket's reach and engagement has surpassed all other professional codes played in New Zealand, including Super Rugby, NRL, A-League, and the ANZ Netball Premierships. That's the power of free-to-air television versus pay-per-view. OCA, Otago Cricket, wants to bring Super Smash cricket back to Alexandra for the foreseeable future. Our cost to broadcast 4 matches in Alexandra each year is approximately $40,000. And we would like to request $10,000 through the Vincent Community Board per year. Otago Cricket will underwrite the difference and work with local business and New Zealand Cricket to cover the difference in broadcast costs, primarily scaffold, big screen technology, and the commentary box solution. Now, the benefits. TVNZ free-to-air broadcast provides a game changer for councils throughout New Zealand to promote their region, both domestically and internationally. 8 countries around the world take broadcast of Super Smash cricket, including Australia, United Kingdom, India, Bangladesh, South Africa, Southeast Asia, and now the USA and into Canada. Alexandra would host 4 Super Smash matches, 2 men and 2 women. It's a total of 14 hours television with the opportunity to have significant signage at venue and regional tourism promotion via TVNZ opportunity. With significant growth in T20 popularity, we expect to see continued increase in spectatorship in and around that 3,000 per match, bringing economic impact to the region, with around 20% of the spectators travelling into the region for matches, and including stays of up to 70 players, management, officials, broadcast personnel whilst in the region over the time of the matches. We will promote the matches in schools, providing family and school promotions, including free entry to children, and coaching clinics from both our men's and women's teams whilst based in the Central Otago region. Just in conclusion, we see this as a win-win for Otago Cricket and for the Central Otago region as a whole. And we would love nothing better over the next 3 years, at least, to partner CODC, the Vincent Community Board, to bring Super Smash cricket back to Alexandra. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Mike. That was quick. Do we have any questions from members? No. Well, thank you very much for that, Mike. Moving on now, we now got Barry and Mike from the Alexandra Rotary Club.
All right, thank you for this opportunity to talk about our application. I'm Barry Hamilton and this is Mike Rooney from Alexandra Rotary. For the last 34 years, we've been running a book sale in Alexandra, which has raised over $600,000 for the community. The money raised is paid into a trust fund and it's given back to our community. Major contributions have been made to Dunstan High School Adventure Course, Dunstan Hospital, St John's, the Helicopter Trust, and many individuals. For the last 14 years, we have used the Memorial Hall in Skird Street for our sale. It runs for 4 days from the 1st to the 4th of January. In 2024, the council is going to double our rent for the 4 days that we use the hall. Our application of $2,800 is to cover this rent, the cost of hiring a storage unit for a year, for advertising the event, and for minor expenses. As we are a charity, we are asking the Vincent Community Board to help us cover these expenses so that all the money raised in 2024 will go back to the many people in the community that deserve our help. So we have 3 questions to ask you. 1, how much money is in this contestable funding? 2, is it increased each year as the rates increase? And 3, what is your criteria in distributing the money? Over to you.
Cool, thank you. And hopefully we can get some of those questions answered for you later on in the meeting.
We might not be here. We've got 5 minutes, so this is part of our 5 minutes.
But members, do you have any questions?
First of all, how much is in this contestable funding?
We'll come to that one
Surely you
in
can
the
answer.
meeting. So right now, this is a chance for the members to ask questions.
We've got 5 minutes. We're putting our case and we're asking 3 questions. You're not willing to answer them.
Because we've got the answer to those questions later on in the meeting. So
Do you want to answer those?
Yeah, so that was provided in the grants policy and grants guide that we distributed to you at our meeting and electronically. However, there's 120,000 annually to give out by the Vincent Community Board for community.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The paper will be interested in that.
okay, moving on to Pippa from Presbyterian Support Otago.
Thank you. I'm Pippa Welston and I work for Family Works. And we facilitate a children's social and emotional wellbeing course called Growing Taller. So we run 4 of these throughout the year, usually 2 in Alexandra, 1 in Cromwell and 1 in Wanaka. It's a fun activity-based program for children aged between 8 and 11. Small group sizes so all the children get to be heard. The children get to change the way they see themselves, increase their self-esteem and learn to identify, express and manage their big emotions. Each week we focus on a different topic, working through anger, worried and sad, what makes me special, friendships, things outside of my control, and my favourite, the power of yet. The children are referred through schools, through learning support coordinators and through health professionals. As soon as we advertise the course, we only take 8 children for each one. As soon as they're advertised, they're filled within sort of 5 or 10 minutes. The programme up until now has been internally funded, but the ability to fund the group programmes has decreased significantly due to the reduction in the rest home occupancy rates during and post-COVID. Short and sweet.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? Tracy?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Just a question in relation to how do you guys differentiate yourself to like the sticks and stones?
Okay, the Growing Taller is just for children aged between 8 and 11.
Yeah.
The children come to us again when they're struggling with sort of some of those big emotions. So each week, from what I understand, Sticks and Stones is more about in schools, anti-bullying. We're kind of giving those children those skills from a very early age to identify those big emotions, know how to deal with them so that hopefully they've got those skills when they're moving into the teenage years.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
So Awesome, thank you very much. Next, we've got Claire and Nigel from Wollongong.
Natasha Control, I'm an Rebecca and I represent Wollongong. It's Nigel Wilson, our chairperson, and apologies from Jamie Richards, she has COVID. Current committee is comprised of a small group of passionate volunteers who are highly motivated to continue the Wollongong legacy. This is a difficult journey for us as we navigate a tight economic period in our community. We have, however, had very positive feedback and interest in the continuation of the Wollongong event. There is a real passion for Wollongong in our district and beyond. It is the only sole wall-based creative event in New Zealand, and community and designer feedback tells us that Wollongong is highly valued. Established in the 1980s and originally known as Miss Wool, Wollongong aims to promote the following: the use of wool and wool products in New Zealand fashion design, the unique wool growing environment of Central Otago, versatility, sustainability and quality of wool as a material, use of sustainable and locally sourced fibre in crafts and garments, and support local wool growers and producers. Historically, the runway shows have been the main Wollongong events. However, to achieve the aforementioned aims, the current committee is working hard to develop the education arm of Wollongong. In the past year, it has run multiple educational events, workshops on crafting and designing with wool, and a showcase of a local designer's work with wool. These events have all been held based in Alexandria. We are working towards having regular education events such as these throughout the year. These also offer collaboration opportunities with other local groups. This has been particularly successful with both the museum and the Alexandria Spinners and Weavers. Wollongong is now a multi-day event with a broad target audience. The 2 evening runway shows cater for those in the community with interest in fashion, wool, sustainability and creativity. People of all ages are welcome at the runway shows as both audience members and entrants. The youngest entrant in the most recent show was 8 years old. Based on the interest in previous years, the most recent show sold out both nights. It is expected that there will be considerable interest in the shows from the community. The Wollongong 2023 runway show will be held at the Canyon and Terrace. Holding the shows in Alexandria in 2024 is the intention of the committee. The new and exciting community education and celebration of Wool Day is to be held on Sunday, the 13th of August in Alexandria, and is open to the public. It will include activities that can be enjoyed by the local community. A range of wool crafting workshops will be run, including workshops designed specifically for children. The target groups for these workshops are people interested in learning new skills for woolcraft, those looking to further develop existing skills, and those who would like to learn how to adapt their existing skills for work with wool. These interactive workshops provide a wonderful opportunity for community connection among people with shared interests. The evening shows are professionally recorded, but they will be shown at the Sunday event for those who weren't able to attend. Also, local traders will draw people who are interested in seeing what raw materials are available, and they provide an opportunity for traders to increase product awareness and promote their brands. Finally, the Judges' Insight session allows audiences and designers to learn about the adjudication process and the features that make certain garments stand out in the runway shows. Wollongong is an important Central Otago art scene event, but it is so much more than that. It is a community celebration with interest which spreads across many people, business, clubs and societies and education opportunities. This committee is truly starting from scratch. We are passionate about building this event and honouring all the work that has gone into it in the past. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Tracy.
Hi, Claire, how you going? I just had a question with regards to the transport side. What was your reasoning to having people come with having the transport provided as opposed to people just driving themselves?
That's a purely choice. If they want to take a bus to the event, it is out of the way. The reason it's at that event centre is because Hayden up there has sponsored us so generously. But as I mentioned, we will be trying to have it in Alexandra next year. Yeah, it gives people an opportunity if they want to have a drink and they don't need to be worried about driving home. So this will be buses from from Cromwell and from Alexandra, but they will be user pays. They are user pays, so that is not what any fund they will be going towards. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll now welcome Tim from the Alexandra Blossom Festival.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. It's flying by for me, and apologies I'm slightly late. Just a brief introduction of Blossom Festival. I don't know to explain to anybody what that event is in this room and the importance of it. I'm the new treasurer, so it's good to put a face to a name on that way, helping out Martin on that side of things and making sure it goes smoothly. All I'd say is we're running a budget already for this year's festival and looking at it. And whilst my brief involvement with the festival to date, one thing that's clear is it does rely and need that council support and grant. And the logic on that is having worked through numbers, we can't forecast the amount of people that come through those gates on the day, we can't forecast the weather, things can happen. So we have some reserves there, which are prudently there to ensure we can sort of factor some unknowns on the day. But without that grant, you know, we would be needing to make and look at some cost cutbacks that would actually, in my view, probably impede the actual quality of the event for the community. So it is, it might get asked, why do we need that? It makes a profit. When we run some numbers on that, that profit can disappear very, very quickly if we're not on top of it and lock things in and don't get the numbers on the day. The second part is, I think this is fantastic. I've been coming to the Blossom Festival since I was a young kid myself, the grandparents. The interesting thing I find about this festival for the community's sake is all those funds that are raised from the community, from the festival, flow through the community in different ways. And I think, you know, I think you'll probably have heard there's a few economic headwinds out there coming around. And I think things like this for our community is actually quite special and quite good. That flows through and is shared through the community in that way. Apart from that, I think it's self-explanatory. It's been around a long time now, we all know. And thank you for taking questions.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions? Thanks for coming.
Cool. Thank you.
We do have the Alexandra Arts and Crafts Group with their grant today. So we do have Anne here if any of us had any quick questions for her.
Hello, I'm Anne Doherty from the Arts and Crafts Umbrella Group. We have 8 crafts groups underneath us. 10 years ago, our group sold their building and gave 200,000 to Community House. For that amount of money, our groups had free rental for 10 years. But now that fun time is over and we had to take out a lease for the storage area and the wet room, which is the pottery room. This lease, we do recoup some of the funds back from the pottery room and all members are allowed to use that, but they would need to hire it from the pottery room. There are quite high costs in insurance, public liability insurance, building insurance that we have to pay the house for, and the lease itself covers the room hire, extra, and outgoings which cover power, infrastructure, things like that. So we have not had to request funding before, so this is new for us. We requested the funding in 2 parts because our balance, our yearly balance goes from January to December, whereas the council ones cut off in July or whatever. So we applied for it in 2 parts, but we're happy to receive it in one and follow it up from there. But we would like some help if we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Just before you go, are there any questions?
So,
That's all good. That's all good. All right. And now we've got in. Oh.
I'll tell you, they're not speaking, but they're part of the team. Some of you may know, some of you may not. He's standing there. I'm sorry. Just before we put the time, I brought this in for people to know, just to confirm my identity. Fortnight ago, I had to do it down here at the council, but I am King Churchill. Here's my picture. So just so you know. Kia ora, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members. The so-called stream as written on the plan is actually a water race. It's been there since 1938. The stream enhancement is approximately 35% of the northern and western proposed perimeter plantings. This race has a black line easement over its entire length. This means you cannot plant to within 3 metres of either side. That enhancement would have to be set back from the edges, negating any water uptake for plant roots. Plus, there's an informal 4-wheel drive track on both sides to enable machine race maintenance. This applies to Plan A and B. Why did Boffa Miskell know this? Didn't know this? Did anyone even go and walk it? Perhaps it was called a stream to deflect the easement issue from the public. The proposal to perimeter plant 116 Lombardy poplars is just ludicrous. As a shelter, they drop masses of leaves in autumn. They are on the wrong side of the native plantings for shelter from the southerly and ease of removal and pruning. Leaf drop will be blown all over the direct neighbours, some dwellings being as close as less than a metre. The neighbours I've spoken to are totally opposed to poplars. The plan shows no break in the planting line where they would be under the 11 kV power line tee-offs. Ratepayers would be expected to pay for these plantings, then pay again for the removal pruning some years later. Maybe we need some cake stalls or some lotto grain. Ask Aurora about planting under lines. Lombardis can grow to 20 metres plus. There's a perfectly good shelter belt right there right now that can be used to shelter the tender natives getting started. That existing shelter belt is at no cost to the ratepayer. I'm sure this board could get a temporary dispensation from the wilding policy from council to approve common sense if that suited Tim. There's no nursery irrigation along any perimeter. Those poplars need to be substituted for Ko-Fi. Ko-Fi was sold to the public in the Boffa Miskell Plan 2022. Who deleted Ko-Fi from the plant palette and why? So Plan B, total no-no. The citizen and baby plantings are in an area without any water, a very dry part of the reserve. The described time retention area is small. Does this mean that all other time areas will be cleared? Many of the rocks have trees growing out of fissures and cracks. How does 20-year resultant stumps fit with the concept of natural landscape? Plan doesn't show this anywhere, not even in an artist's impression. I think the public has a right to know about stump visuals. Water source and irrigation surely needs to be in place before commencement. To commit public money to this project without a definitive water irrigation plan is just plain irresponsible. You will be exposing new plantings to a death sentence. Funding. It seems that the council want to use VCB money for this. To look at the Omakau hub or ISA 9 possible monies seems incredibly unfair to those projects. Relying on volunteer groups to plant out all those thousands of plants highlights the lack of funding. Going up there with the garden trowel and the crowbar, hello, council have totally missed the point about amenity shade for this group reserve users with this A or B. Please don't be party to power cuts at the start of winter due to the felling method. Whatever's decided today here can be voted by His Worship the Mayor, as you all are painfully aware. Cheers.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any questions for Ken before he goes? Roger? Yeah.
You said, guys, I can't turn it off. I'm getting with a chainsaw.
Just thinking of what you said about the crowbars and so on for planting. Have you looked at the Mangaroon Recreation Reserve where the planting effort is of a similar nature, having to break into very rocky ground, but that's a community-led planting exercise, which has certainly worked very well there. Why couldn't that model work at the Heartland?
Two things about the Lower Mannaboon. I'm gonna hope I don't cut off. Lower Mannaboon, contrary to council policy, is a staged removal and replant. I know what the ground's like, I've photographed it. Up there is, in terms of scale and numbers of plants, it's huge. Our community, right, were left behind at the point where staging was outlawed, voted against, veto. So I live up there. I know I'm getting older. I'd love to go and plant native, but to be fair to everybody, you've kind of left the community behind. And a lot of people that do voluntary stuff, I haven't got grey hair, but we're all getting older. And, you know, can you imagine, seriously, a group of people planting 116 poplars in the wrong place, let alone all the other stuff? Absolutely great idea, Roger. I'm so with you. But seriously, it just highlights that there is no definitive funding for this, and they're putting it on the VCB. It's a council
question there. Any other questions? Thank you, Ken. Right, thank you to everybody for coming along and speaking today. So we move on to item 23.3.1, the declarations of interest register. Just a reminder to please be vigilant and step aside from decision making when necessary. We now move on to item, we jump around, so we're going to jump to item 23.3, oh sorry, confirmation of the minutes. Can somebody please move that those are approved? Tracy and Di, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carries. Now we'll move on to the Alexandra District Museum's accountability report on page 21. Hand over to Rebecca.
We've just got a presentation, so we just. Oh, good afternoon and thank you. This report is about the annual accountability report from Alexandra District's and Districts Museum. And so every grant recipient is required to do an accountability report, and due to the size of funding that is received from ADMI, part of their process is to come and present directly to the board. And so the point behind that is so that we can hear what's happening in all those organisations and ensuring good use of public funds. And so ADMI have been invited to share with you today an update on what they have been up to, and we're looking forward to seeing a presentation today. But just before that, I've got a couple of points on my report. I just want to make 2 points. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the contribution of Malcolm McPherson. I also note a small typo in my cover report. I've called him Mr. McPherson when he should have, of course, have been Doctor. And I only noticed that when I was preparing for today, so apologies to Malcolm if he's watching. But I just really want to acknowledge his work for ADMI. He really went above and beyond the call of duty and has ensured that ADMI had that solid foundation and is the vibrant organisation that the present board have been able to build upon. So just to say that. And secondly, I've noted in my cover report that ADMI have included a strategic plan with future funding requests, and so at this stage our grants budget is remaining static and the draft annual plan does not anticipate an increase. That may well be addressed in the long-term plan going forward, but that might be something that the board wants to talk about directly with ADMI. And finally, I just want to congratulate the staff and the current board for what they have created over at Central Stories. I've been there on a number of occasions, and every time it's a very vibrant and lovely place to visit. So I just want to end on that before handing over to the board to hear from them. Let me know when you want me to press play.
I'll just had it playing in the background and watching. We just thought we would have some snapshots and some videos of what we've been doing over the last few months. But I know a lot of you have been into Central Stories and seen what we've been doing. So should I say maybe actually there's not much difference. So welcome anyway. Well, thank you for having us here today, and it's wonderful to report on what we've been doing. My name's Janice Millis. I'm sure most of you know who I am. And I would thank you for the members. I think you've all been into Central Stories to see what we've been doing, especially with the World War I exhibition that we've got going at the moment, which has have been outstanding. You'll see in our presentation here that a lot of schools have been coming in to see all of our presentations, not just this one. And we've become part of the curriculum of our local schools, even down to the schools in Dunedin have been travelling up there as well. As Rebecca said, we do have to give a big shout out to Malcolm and what he's done for us and setting some groundwork for us and coercing us onto the board and helping him out as well, which has been good. It's been big boots to fill, and we've been running to catch up with him, but I think we're almost there. I'd also like to introduce you to our board at the moment, the members that are here. You'd like to stand up, just want to say. Graham Crichton is our chair, Andy Davey is our financial officer, Stu Millis, a board member, and of course everybody should know who this person is. Paula Stevenson, she's our operations manager / manager. So she comes up with these wonderful ideas, and then she says, "What do you think, guys?" And we try and do what we can. But the one important thing that Paula has done is included all of the communities. She's included RSA, the local theatrical society for some costumes for the World War I, the Feltings exhibition, the group there. They just included everybody, so it's become a real hub. And I'm sure that when you go in now, if you've been in, most of you have been in, the hubbub that is going on in the museum. In fact, I want to rename it the Cultural Centre actually, because it's far more than just a museum, it's more of a cultural centre. The hubbub that goes on in there is deafening at times, and it's so exciting. And one of the things that Paula introduced was holiday school programs for children to come in and find out what's in the museum. And I had, when I was doing my voluntary work, had a grandmother come in and she said to me, now what's going on in the holidays coming up, because my grandchildren are coming down from Wellington and I walked them here last time and I want to do it again. And Paula said, tick, the community knows, excellent, so that's wonderful. So one of the other ones was a guy from London, an engineer, was really interested in the, I've forgotten the name, the bridge that we've got and his workings. And I said to him, I need to ask you to make sure that we're, looking after this artifact properly. And he just was so chuffed. He went away and instead of people visiting just for a few minutes, they're now staying for a couple of hours. And they're just wonderful. We had the Merino exhibition, which was wonderful, with Mrs. York doing a wonderful presentation, and one of our visitors said to us, can we bring this to Christchurch, to the Christchurch Museum? So I thought, oh, well done us for what we're doing there as well. So I just want to hope you enjoy our enthusiasm and what we're doing with Central Stories, and hopefully we spent your money well. And and of course, we're wanting more. That's been a so if you've got any questions, it would be just wonderful.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions? Tracy?
Not really a question, just I guess an observation. It was when Paula took us around, it was really fabulous to have a look around and see what work that was going on there as we went as a group. It was really great, and it was really nice to see everything that was going on there. So thank you and thumbs up for Paula.
That's just another thing that I want to add, and that is since Paula has been reported, you'll notice on your report the foot traffic. And statistics tell a lot of a big story, and that foot traffic that's coming through is just growing month by month, end by end. So that's because of what's going on in the museum, and our partnerships with other museums is outstanding as well, and the universities and the science project that's coming up very shortly. It's just I could stand here for an hour and keep on going because it's just so exciting. Exhausting, I have to say, but exciting. So
just continuing on that, and I know, and I'm not trying to increase anybody's workload here. There is a lot of people from outside Alexandra, working people, that might like to see some of these exhibitions in the evening. Are some of those open in the evenings? Because I know that you guys close at 4 o'clock.
Thanks for asking that question. It's something I've actually been remiss in mentioning today, is that our staffing problems we've got a problem.
Yeah.
And Paula's working too many hours.
Yeah.
And she'll hate me saying that, but she is. But we do have a lot of evening performances and exhibitions. But our staffing levels are the problem. The volunteers can only do so much.
Yeah.
But this is what our funding is for, is to help us to go forward and get back to the staffing levels that we had pre-COVID. Yeah, you'll see in one of the statistics, it's the blue line, the snapshot of that 5 weeks, where we had to close because Paula had COVID. The current line is still 1%. Yeah. So that's hence why the budget is what it is, and what we're aiming for, and to make it happen. So thank you.
One thing we have done is opening the weekends now. So it's on the third Saturday, so we're 7 days a week now from 10 to 4.
Is there any other questions? Anyone? I was just going to quickly say, it was quoted in the media during the election, I called Central Stories dull and boring. But I just want for the record to say that I was completely wrong. You guys have been doing an amazing job. So I do apologise for that. Congratulations on
Well, I
what
just
you're
thought
doing.
I'd leave this with you as well. I'm not sure whether you've got these. You can take one home. And this is how our Central Stories started. It was a community effort, a community working for a community. So please take one of those home. It's very interesting reading. So, yeah. So I won't bore you anymore because I get so excited about things. And that's
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Could I please have somebody move that we receive that report? Tony, the seconder, Roger, all in favour? Aye. And that's carries. Thank you. That moves us on to item 23.3.2, which is the community and promotions 2022-2023 second round. So for this part, I'm going, sorry.
You do the promotion by excuse.
Okay.
Yeah, we had it followed down in the spot.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna. Okay, so we're gonna start with the promotion scrums. So Malcolm's declared interest, so he's gone. So I'll hand it over to you.
So thank you, everybody. I'll take it that you read the applications. Just some key points for you. For today's meeting, you're actually considering applications that are going to transition across 2 financial years. So we've got Wollong, which I've presented to you as a possibility to fund from within this current year. We have an unallocated budget amount of 3696, taking into account previous commitments. And then you will have the Otago Cricket and Blossom Festival applications considering funding from the 23-24 financial year. In short, just briefly, Wollong, I think the grant assessment is hopefully reasonably clear. What I'm looking to do is that because they're running their events across 2 community board areas, so they're running their catwalk show in the common area, and then a number of supporting events in this valley. We don't have a centralised events budget at council level, and no ability to, or no fund there for that. Therefore, I've presented this application to both boards with a tentative suggestion that a partial funding amount comes from Vincent, looking at an amount of about $3,500, the balance from Cromwell. This is a great event from the perspective, it's unique and very linked to Central Otago's, one of Central Otago's key produce, I suppose you would call it, being wool. And I can applaud the committee that's come on board. They've taken on board previous advice from council to make early applications to be well organised, and I believe that they've been in contact with a board member to be a liaison person from this perspective. So that's all on. Otago Cricket, as Mike said, now they have contract for free-to-air TV. They had previously ended up taking the cricket from Central Otago and going through to Queenstown, utilising facilities there that allowed them to meet Sky Sports requirements. You only, whilst Mike talked about there being a 3-year partnership, in this instance, we're only looking at a 1-year application, and that's to look at the events at the end of this calendar year. So would be funded from the 23-24 financial year. Blossom Festival, I don't think we need to cover too much off. It's really well known. It's an amount that the festival has asked for in the last 7 years that I can recall. There's no change to that, and again, they apply that funding to the infrastructure costs of the event. So as has happened previously, should the event for some reason not be able to proceed, that is a fund that can be returned to council. Hopefully that's enough from me.
Okay, so we'll start on with the Wollong Creative Vision Society. Just asking for 3,500. Vote on any thoughts, comments to make?
Yeah. Roger. Reading the application, it seemed that most of the benefit, financial benefit, went to the Cromwell area, not to our area. We've got for Alexandra education and so on, which is not negligible, but it seemed that we were picking up 1/3 of the tab, half the amount that, Cromwell was being asked for a proportionally lot smaller return. That was my feeling on reading the application.
I'm reading the application. And the discussions I've had with the applicant, the ability for the committee to host events here throughout the year, because they have done other events in the Vincent area. So whilst it's not directly linked to that one event, proportionately I thought it was a fair figure. However, that's entirely the board's decision.
Have you got a kind of sense on the balance of that from the physical event to the general kind of benefit in the community you talk about? Have you got a sense of what the economic benefit is?
No, there'd be no way of doing that without doing a proper assessment of the people who attend the event and understanding what the economic impact would be from that actual full weekend.
Anything else? So obviously the amount requested is 9,190, recommendation being 3,500. Is anybody happy to move the recommendation? Tracy, does it have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second
Okay. Yeah, all in favour?
Yeah.
Okay. Vote against? And that's carried.
Just over here, did you want that committee to be subject to Cromwell also giving funding? Did the board want to consider that at all, or you're just happy to pass it as a?
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, yeah, if we're giving Cromwell should as well.
Okay.
Then we should be subject to Cromwell coming on soon.
Do you want to move that? What's the subject to Cromwell Community Board's approval?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, it's moved by Diana, seconded for that.
I'll second that.
Roger, all in favour?
Yep.
Aye. Against, and it's also carried. So that moves us on to the Alexandra Blossom Festival. Is there anything to add to that?
No, the only thing I would say is that if you approve both of these requested amounts in full, that would leave you with a balance of $7,250 for the 23-24 financial year for other applicants.
Well, we could start by just kind of getting a read of the room on ladies and gentlemen about that. So we approve both. We're effectively using up the entire budget for the next financial year. Anybody have any comments or questions around that?
The best risk of not done is we get to where we've just been in terms of we've got $3,600 and we've proved taking a haircut on something to achieve it.
Yeah.
So that's the risk, isn't it, if we do that.
Person?
I do like the idea that the cricket is going to be more than 1 year. We've seen in the past where we've supported things and it's been a one-hit wonder. I think it's more important to have, I mean, Blossom Festival is, it's an institution in Alexandra. You know, it is something that happens and the wide reach of that is very well known. I do like this, that 3-year commitment for.
It's only 1 year though.
Is it one?
You're only considering one.
You're only considering 1 year.
Yeah.
Classifications to
Yeah.
3 years.
Okay, so
So it runs over 3 years, but we're only considering the first year.
Yeah, because the next round will be after the LTP, so I can't do anything until that's on road.
So the cricket's not going back to Queenstown in the next 3 years, is it? What was it?
That's what's proposed, it's from Tiger Creek, yeah.
So I guess what we don't want to see is we give the 10,000 and then they take it back to Queenstown in those second years. So is that a firm commitment, do you know?
Actually, David, you had a conversation. What's that?
Yeah, is the Queenstown not 50 overs?
Pardon me?
Is the Queenstown not 50 overs compared to T20?
No, it was especially to Queenstown last year.
Yeah.
That did never be.
Okay, Tim?
Just going back to when we previously lost it, Otago Cricket doesn't have full control, so they really wanted to keep it here, but it was the broadcaster that held the whip hand. So I think they can say that their best intentions are with total sincerity.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they've got a 3-year contract with the new provider that's happy, then you're probably tickety-boo, but I don't know, but I think that's.
Yeah, I can't say that for certain, but
Yeah.
they've got this 3-year contract, but it has come down to the broadcasting rights of it. So, yeah.
So, do we know the reason why it was pulled from here last time?
The coverage contract was with Sky, and the cost of installing the requirements for their broadcast were beyond, it was about $50,000.
Yeah.
And that was beyond what could be funded locally.
Yeah, and it's been with Molly Park, but it's harder for them to set up here. Queenstown's quite.
They've got all the
user
towers
friendly.
and the.
Yeah, our site screens apparently aren't big enough.
So, yeah, through the chair, it's gone sort of pay-per-view back to free-to-air. Change, yeah.
It is it's definitely popular when the cricket does come here.
So through the chair, I believe that the crowd numbers are better when it's held in Alex. I think Queenstown didn't welcome it.
I think about nearly double on Queenstown. So it's a good thing for our community, that's for sure.
And through the chair, I can probably just comment that the regular applications for funding that we would expect to see would be the ones of the Central Otago AMP show, which had come to the board previously. And the Prospector mountain bike race is another event that's come to the board previously for funding. I have no idea whether they'd be coming back or not.
I could probably talk to one of those, but not the other.
So we start with the Super Smash for the Otago Cricket Association. Is anybody wanting to move that recommendation of the $10,000?
Are we leaving that as entirely, or are we making it subject to a 3-year?
So what yeah, don't really care.
From what he said, it was the broadcasting, I thought the broadcasting around, but we were a bit longer than 1 year, wasn't it? And that was the enabler for coming to bring things down.
Yeah, I think if my cautiousness is around, does that pre-commit you to funding for 3 years?
That's my concern with that, is we're effectively committing ourselves as well. When they come back. Do you have something there?
No, I just think that's a very valid point. If you're saying they're going to be committed for 3 years, then.
Yeah, we're effectively committing ourselves to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Tracy's point of saying that we're done with 1-to-1. No information for 1-to-1. If you don't, might be an unhit one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just pulling out one, like to make it subject to the adoption of the new plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be moving that subject to the new plan.
It has been the subject.
Yeah.
So it'll be that.
Okay. So does somebody want to move C up on the board, allocates 10,000 to the Otago Cricket Association for the T20 Super Smash cricket broadcast towers and consent costs for the promotions grant in the 2023-2024 financial year, subject to the adoption of the 2023-2024 annual plan.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, Tracy will move that. Second, Roger, all in favour?
Yeah.
Aye. Against? It's carried.
Just through the chair on the cricket, I do have to answer information. There is a 3-year current agreement.
Exciting.
Yeah. So that moves us on to the Alexandra Blossom Festival. Anybody got any comments or questions around that?
Do we know what percentage of funding between that and our major grant is of the total cost?
Cost of the running quality, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The total cost of the program is 241,134, so roughly 10%.
So in the event that, like what happened last year with that is recoverable, isn't it?
As long as they haven't incurred the costs at that point in time.
Bearing in mind they do have reserves.
And they're reasonable reserves.
Yeah.
At this point in time. I mean, in a perfect world, it would be nice to see the Blossom Festival reduce its requirement on council grant so that the board had funding for new projects.
And in the past, what percentage of the funding has come from council?
They've been running at 24.5 for probably 3-ish years. And then prior to that, they were getting a grant for around $26,000.
My concern is still sitting with the fact we're spending the majority of next year's funding already. Does somebody want to move that? It's at the current recommendation, or does somebody want to amend that? Indication for the room.
I'll move it.
Okay, Tracy will
In
move
its current form.
in its current form. Does that have a seconder? All in favour? Aye. Yes, carried. Thank you.
Before we move on, are we able just to receive the report?
Right, does somebody want to move that we? Sure. Diane, you did that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know, yeah. So that moves us on to the community grants. Now, I'm going to declare a conflict on this one, and so I'm saying order 14.1. We need a chair, so if there's no objection, I'd like to hand you over to Roger Brown for this part. Objection? Right.
You're going to, I'm just going to move. Right. Community grants, we have a total of 5. And
Thank you, Roger. So just a couple of points before I speak to my notes. Promotions grants are for events into the future, and so it is more of a normal thing to fund an event for next year because the event organisers need to know that and we're going to be able to pay, whereas community grants are very much more in the financial year in which we're talking. So it's only through special occasion that we would look into a grant for a future financial year. So just because we've had that discussion, I think it's worth noting. So we've got two things, two tools to help you with this, because staff recommendations are just that, they're just a starting point for your conversation. So this decision table can be adjusted as you move figures around. You can put them in the table and it will populate the figures so that you know what money you've got to spend. So if you need that through the conversation, that's available. And then sitting in behind is the draft resolution for you, just again as a starting point for, I don't know if we've added any subject twos in there, but there's some suggestions from staff on the draft resolutions as a starting point. So then just to speak to my notes, as I mentioned earlier in the public forum, annually the Vincent Community Board has $120,000 to distribute through its community grants program. This is the second round for the current financial year, and you've got 24,729 left to distribute. We've received 5 applications, and they requested a total of $25,390.40. I'm happy to respond to any specific questions about any of the assessments that you have. But I would like to make the following specific points. I've recommended that the application from the Alexandrian District's Youth Trust for the Alexandra Touch Tournament is declined. This is the normal touch rugby season, and there was nothing in the application that made it stand out from other sporting codes. I did I did talk to the applicants, because I invited them to see if they wanted to come and speak to their application. I advised them that my recommendation, I advised that I was recommending a decline and that it was a recommendation only, and that you guys may completely disagree with my recommendation, and, but they didn't want to commit any more of the time of the organisations in doing so. And they also raised a concern about how the suggestion was made to apply for a grant. And so I've talked that through with the park, because when fees and charges are set, there's no ability for staff to give a discount on that. The delegation is that the fees and charges that are set out in the schedule are set, and there's no ability for staff to waiver from them. The only ability to offset those fees and charges is through grants processes. And that's what was suggested to this particular group. However, when I looked at it, I thought, well, how is that different from netball or rugby or hockey or any other sporting code? So that's the basis of my recommendation, but I do feel a little bit mean. We have talked about how we can not put an organisation in that position in the future. So I just wanted to note that. For Rotary, I just wanted to note that in the past, Vincent Community Board has supported the book sale through a discretionary chair's decision to reduce the charge of the hall. They found this year's advice a little bit bureaucratic. And so we've walked through, well, look, this provides an opportunity for you to have a look at all the costs of the book sale and to come to the board to see if you had the appetite to consider those other costs that they face, and that's what they've done. In my recommendation, I haven't suggested that you give the whole, because there's some things in there that I'm not sure it's appropriate for the board to fund. And finally, I just want to speak to the PSO application, Presbyterian support. I've recommended that you fund it, but when you consider that, I'm wary of the board almost fully funding an ongoing program, and that's what this is. They've received funding from elsewhere previously, being the Tyndall Foundation, and that funding's now stopped. So the program will stop unless you fund it, unless they can get funding from other elsewhere. But I just wanted to note that if you fund this, then it is likely to be an annual request that comes to you. And I've also noted in my assessment of it that not many other funders will fully fund anything. They usually partially fund. Now, CODC doesn't have that rule. I think it is something that we're going to look at when the grant policy is reviewed later this year, that it is something that we consider. But I just wanted to point that out again. We don't have that rule. You're entitled to make the decision on the basis of the application. My recommendation is based on the money available in the pot, because I haven't got much discretion otherwise. So I've said too much this time. I don't normally speak a lot, but I just wanted to make those points. But I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the particular applications.
Board members have any questions of the residents?
Yeah, but Tyndall, so there'll be a raft of other funders in the similar space to where Tyndall is?
Yeah, it will depend on, I mean, Presbyterian support is a large organisation, and so they'll be balancing their books and applying to various funders for various activities, and they've looked at CODC in particular for this particular program. So I can't hand on heart say that another funder will pick that up, because that'll depend on how PSO arranges their programs and offerings to the community. They did say in the application that it was offset by funding from the rest homes, and that's diminished. And so even with that Tyndall Foundation funding, so yeah.
I'm going to talk to all of them individually, if I may. Totally understand the reason behind the decline of the calculation. Support Ken's operational expenses, because it's one of those citizens advice network. We are not living in Auckland, so we're not getting rid of them, because they do a lot of work for a lot of people. Having the arts and crafts, because again, it's a very small amount of money, and it captures a really decent amount of people across the half a dozen organisations which I'm involved with. I have a real problem with giving Rotary Club all the money. I would be quite happy to support what we've done in the past through this contestable fund is funding the room hire, because I put down to the advertising promotions as part of it's part of the gig. You know, it's a cost you accept. Where I get a little tricky is with Presbyterian support. I'm not saying the program is not worthwhile, because it obviously is. It's 12 kids who obviously need help, but is it the territory for local government to be involved in? It's in that sort of education, social welfare crossover, and just philosophically doesn't sit with me. I can be persuaded.
The other members have comments on that, thoughts?
Yes, the dilemma is, it's a great investment, but is it our investment?
We were of course in the position where we can still give them funds, but a small amount.
I take comment to what Rebecca said, is that if this program has relied on external funding and that is dried up, are we creating, by giving them money now, are we setting a precedent for other like-minded organisations seeking funding? That's the risk.
Martin, has it happened in your time on the community board?
Not that I'm aware of, that we have we've funded organisations which are working with youth under the catalyst of things like the Youth Trust and like that, which tend to be not as specific as this particular application. It tends to be more general. So in capturing a range of offering less specific services than this is, this is a really quite specific service being offered, and one which I would have assumed would be picked up by the state or other education providers.
Why would you assume that?
Well, I know. That's why they're here, because it isn't. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Can't get that word out. That's the dilemma that I face. I don't decry the need. I just wonder if we're the vehicle to supply it.
I see the appeal of it as it's specific. You've got a tangible outcome if it's 12 kids or 22 kids. Yeah, you've got a specific outcome. Is it our dilemma?
Right, are we comfortable with the total 5 grants totaling 15,345? Are we happy about that as a
well, I'd like to see the Rotary grant taken back to just covering the cost of the hall hire.
And we know what the cost of the hall hire is?
He's in charge of schedule.
And their application states it's 320, but I think it's 640.
Yeah, well then 700.
Okay, we can make that, reduce that to 700
on the board.
Good. Nothing. Yeah.
And you know, what other members think of the Presbyterian support? It's a big chunk of change, and
Okay, good question then. How do the other members of the board feel about the Presbyterian support? It is quite a large chunk.
How would you feel, Martin, if it was at this amount, or perhaps a bit less if it was subject to them coming up with the funding from another source through?
well, they literally asked us for the maximum amount of money. This what the call it's 8925 there, isn't it? They asked us for 700. We've offered them 50% of what they've asked for.
Rebecca.
Can I just clarify that figure? The figure is the amount they've asked divided by 2, because I've said that you shouldn't consider an application for next year's program in this financial year, that if you were a mind to fund it, that they should be requested to come back so that you consider which then our next financial year's application along with all other grants that you receive in the first round. So I'm saying that you should only be, that's why it's half, because it's not because I'm suggesting half. I'm suggesting.
You'd like them to come back to hunting ground.
I've suggested to you that if you're of a mind to fund them, that you're only considering the program that's in this financial year, not in future financial years, and that any funding for future financial years should be considered alongside all other applications that you receive in that financial year. That's that difference between events funding and community funding.
But in reality, we're going to fund the first half of the program.
You only fund one program, you fund one program for 8 kids.
Program for 8 kids.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of kids. I think that the question is our function. Is that how we serve the community? Through the program. So I think the best, it's a great program, it's a great content. Is that how we serve? That's a job of the child. Right, should we?
Can't put a value on a child.
I tried to say to you, I have got all the receipts though, she will be giving the accounts due course.
Yeah.
And actually, when you think about it, it could be money well spent if you think about it in the long term.
Okay, any other general comments before we go specifically to each item? First one then, Alexandra District Youth Trust. And
Can we just have the resolution up?
Yeah.
Why? Because that's the wording from the order. So that's
That's, okay, one moment. There you go, so that would be E. It's the youth trust.
Thank you. So would anyone like to move that we define the youth trust?
I'll move that.
Moved I. Seconded. Nelson. Martin, in favour? Against? Carried.
I think it's important to note that we are against the touch rugby, but yeah, this is like Martin said, it's a precarious position we find ourselves in. Where we want to, we encourage sport, we encourage community events, and we're in a, yeah.
But you can't put one on this. The second one, Alexandra Community Advice Network.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Moved. Martin, seconded Tony, all in favour? Against? Carried. Third one, the arts and craft. Moved, right. They be allocated $800.
I'll move that.
Move Tracy, seconded, Tony, all in favour? Against? Carried. The fourth one, Alexandra Rotary Club for an annual book sale. The suggestion had been that we reduce the cost of that of the room hire, and Martin had suggested $700.
Well, what we can move, we give them $700 towards the venue hire. The storage costs and advertising are part of the deck.
Yeah, okay. So
Can I just, if it is for the venue hire, then it should be 640. Rounding up makes no sense.
Oh, so,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, 640.
640.
If that is the cost.
If that's the venue hire,
Yeah, it's probably a good point.
And maybe not towards, just as venue hire. Because if it was towards venue hire, it would be less than not venue hire. So the lawyer comes out with four venue hire.
So that's,
Okay, so we have the,
do a second.
640 for the, venue hire, moved by Martin, seconded by Lil. Yeah, it's just, no, thank you very much. All in favour? Against, carried. And the last one was the Presbyterian support family work.
Excuse me, Roger,
Sorry?
may I ask Rebecca another question on that?
Yes, certainly.
Sorry to, Rebecca, was there any indication that if the funding was not available from council, that the program would stop? Do you have any indication?
I suspect that's the case. The funding's been withdrawn, and so I did speak with some. I went back, what's your backup plan if you don't get the amount? Funding is much harder to achieve for these days, and we know these programs make a difference. If we were not successful in achieving the full funding sought, we would work to seek it elsewhere, but as stated, funding is harder to obtain from more rural communities. And I rang and asked, it was through a telephone conversation that I found out about the Temple Foundation, because it wasn't clear in your application about how it was funded previously.
Okay, so. We have, move that, that application be, approved.
I'll move it.
Tracy, thank you. Any, a second on that? Second, if we don't have a seconder, then the motion lapses. Do we want to make an alternative grant? No, I don't think it's ever wrong.
So the options are either the decline or the lesser amount.
Yeah, so we have the option of having a lesser amount, so we can choose something less than the requested amount. The alternative is that we just simply decline it.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, by the motion finding the seconder, that means it's lapsed. Does that by itself mean it's declined, or does it have to be moved to be declined?
I think that it's, I think it's more proper for, because a grant has been applied for.
Yeah.
I think a decision on that needs to be made, and a decline with a reason is useful for the applicant.
I'll read the Grich and move that we decline the grant.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. A second.
But who to?
Reason.
We usually have it offline. So for the art, for the sports one, we've said due to the president, it was set for other sporting codes.
I think that it's the precedent sets for other educational and social service providers in this district.
Have you got that?
Okay, is there a second tracking on that?
Yeah.
Education and social.
What's that?
Educational social service providers.
Oh, and social service.
Full wording and we'll get a version on that. Okay, we have the full motion on board. It's been moved and seconded. Those in favour? Those against?
Yeah.
Yeah, one against. Right. Thank you very much. That's the promotions done. Happy to hand back to our chairman.
Well, thank you everybody for that. Can I just also remind people that if you've got your phones switched on, can you please put them on silence? So we now move on to item 23.3.4 on page 32, the half mile recreation reserve. And yeah, that's absolutely fine. And welcome, Billy. Thank you, Chairman.
That's how organised. So last meeting, you recall that the board agreed to the removal of wilding from the half mile and a redevelopment plan for the site to be developed, and that was all within the wildlife control policy. The draft plan, the plan is on your agenda with two options. And this plan is based on the concept plan of natural sequoia target landscape we started on last year. The plan includes feedback from the community engagement process and informal feedback from some of the neighbours, particularly along with the shelter for the plan. And we have heard that might not be quite correct down, so we can discuss that shortly. There are, as was pointed out, public forum wires throughout the site, so we are quite well aware of the impacts and restrictions that are required for planting in and around zones. Although the plan doesn't specifically show where they are, this is when the plan is undertaken on the ground, they will be avoided so that we aren't in the situation we're in at the moment with trees impacting in the lines of wires. And just as an aside, that following on from the cyclones up north, that legislation is being, I guess, strengthened or proposed to be strengthened by the government. So there'll be even tighter restrictions of planting near overhead wires as we go forward. I imagine the government will approve those changes to the legislation. Irrigation will be required, as I said in my report, for at least 3 to 5 years, and it will be sourced through council's town supply in the vicinity. The details for this, I guess, irrigation system is yet to occur, and it is likely to require a header tank pump or two within the site so that water can be put up to the site and then fed back from that over time, over the night time. So the water races, we're well aware of the requirements of water races, and that's an indicative planting along the water race. If we want to promote, if the board wants to go ahead with that, that's fine. If they don't, it's not isn't material really. So that's it, just to beautify, and we do know the requirements along that past chance water race zone there. We, as I said in my report, we're exploring third-party funding options and also community engagement options for planning in the site and help us to fund that site. And the shelter tree concept was chosen because they're a faster growing, slim growing thing plant and don't have branches that will, I guess, impact on the growth of the native shelter that we're trying to enhance along there. So if you had a lot of branches, could potentially grow out over the plants that we want to grow there in the natives and cause a bit of a rain shadow and suppress their growth rates. So that was the option. That was the thought for those. There are other options we could have used too, but then we've heard in the public forum that might not be required anyway. So we can discuss that as I said earlier. And just as an update to the board, the planned removal of the wildings on site is scheduled for the first week of June. And it will take around 2 weeks, weather dependent. And we're just working with our various contractors and communications departments to put out information there for that going forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
I might just add to Gordy's, if that's okay. So I had some feedback from my residents in the area around the need for the shelter belt that's in there and options too. And clearly there's some further information on that as well. So the poplars there came from the idea of finding the fastest growing tree to provide that neighbouring shelter as quick as possible, and that's why that was there. However, as Woody said, there are other options as well, to be considered. But at the time, there was feedback from one particular resident who was keen for that as a shelter. So that's where that's come from. And then just to add to Gordy as well, there are a few other things in there around citizenship, tree planting, community gardens and the like. So
As this board knows, we have citizenship ceremonies here, and some of the feedback that we've had from the last couple is that where people do come and join our community, they're often renting houses and things like that in the early days, and have asked if council have a place to plant trees. And then same with the other two areas there around things like trees for babies and community gardens and the like, is that council recently introduced some guidance around planting, I guess, memorial trees and things like that. So we've identified the site as being a key place for that as well. So yeah, and I think as well, thanks to the people who have given some feedback, we have obviously between the last meeting and this one, it was relatively tight to be able to produce this and render it from the concept that was shared with the community. But obviously open to any questions, and obviously some good extra thought from the public forum today as well.
Cool. We'll start with Tracy.
Goy, do you have any other trees that you can suggest other than poplars? My personal experience with poplars isn't great, so I would love to hear something else and have another option on the table than poplar.
Well, that's shelter belt.
For the shelter, if the shelter belt was to go ahead, I would like, if that option was chosen, I would like to definitely put some other options on there. That's my first part of my question. My second part of my question is, we talk about this shelter belt going for 8 to 10 years. In the event that none of us are sitting around this table,
Thanks.
sorry, Martin. In the event that we're 8 to 10 years down the track, and what are we going to do to protect? Because it may we might find that that shelter belt works really well and people are happy with it. Or so what I'm trying to do is protect both the residents and the council's position on what, if that shelter belt is created, what is going to happen to it, so that there is no confusion 8 to 10 years down the track.
So it's going to come out.
That it's either going to come out, or if it's an appropriate tree. I just don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have the community upset and the council trying to do something that people, there may be different landowners that have come on, that, there may be different landowners up there. So it's just a thought, is if that option is approved.
Right, so that's, the first question was a few options, just off the top of my head, maybe Laden cypress, something like that, that's quite a fast growing hedge tree. Gemma cypress is another one.
There's swamps.
There's those in the mix anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting non-native, quicker growing at the back, is poplars shown plan B, then yeah, something like that would be I'd have to give some thoughts more off the top of my head, but yeah, something like Laden cypress is quite an acceptable hedge if you want evergreen.
Yeah.
Also bear in mind that they do suck quite a bit of moisture out of the ground as they grow. And the second question really is, once you plant something, people do get used to it.
Yeah.
So it might be a job from council in 8 or 10 years time to say we need to take that out. And the only way that I see is, staff and councillors do change over time, is it'll be something, a line item in the 10-year plan. I would say removal of trees that say year 10 on the day or year 8, and then the council of the day would I guess debate whether the trees stay or go. And we'd put a line item, and so that would happen through this next LTP. So it's there for people to just come to it when the time comes. But yeah, it's going to be a hard decision, whatever council they go.
Yeah, I think so. Your question, Tracy, is around if we provide a shelter belt, the option of it being a long-term shelter belt rather than it coming out, and to look at tree options that would have longer longevity in them, is the question.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, with Laden cypress, they can be hedged, I guess.
Yeah.
So it is, and that might be, I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of the community out there, but that might be an acceptable I don't know, it's just, I think I would like to see, if that option was agreed to, chosen, I would like to see that the community was involved in that choice of training, I guess, so that we can.
Yeah, the other, you know, pencil truck cyclists and other things are quite narrow
Yeah.
as well, so there's quite a few options.
Yeah.
Coming to me now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we can
Just not.
get a list if we need to, yeah.
Cool, cool. Thank you. Martin. My major concern is these trees coming down next month. We haven't got any secure funding. What happens if we don't get the funding from external sources? What plans are in place to come next summer when the wind blows and the dust gets turned up and things like that to, you know, to keep the amenity there? Because if we don't get the $180,000, where's that money coming from?
Yes, there's two questions here, Martin. The first, in the report, there are recommendations of how that could be funded. So one of them was in the long-term plan, which would obviously be over that longevity. And then the other options that are in there around your reserves that you have available. And then staff would work as hard as we could over the next 12 months to try and find that external funding to reduce that impact. So
has there been any concern, and this is all coming out of VCB budgets?
Yeah.
As this is a council initiative, should not the cost be then spread across the district? Because why should it just fall to us when all the decisions have been made at a council level, not at the VCB level, but the costs of all this are falling on the ratepayers of this district?
So I guess my answer to that is probably around, so this board did approve the redevelopment of that site in the last meeting, and then around the funding going up to long-term plan, I might even just refer to my learning colleague over here around, could we make a recommendation to that?
So with the budget line set is, the delegation reports. So there would need to be a change at the council level and delegation in the wards, which would basically remove rights of the wards. So by doing something like that, effectively, you would be giving your power or decision making over that space back to council.
Well, has that decision-making process been taken off us already?
So within the delegations, every community board needs to abide by council policy.
Yeah.
And it is up to you to, within that policy, if it's something that was within the board's control over the budgets, that you manage the budget impacts thereon.
Well, that's all I'm going to say is it was splitting hairs. But my biggest concern, okay, no. What concrete ways can we help to bury the hatchet, which has arisen between the residents and this board over our actions? Are we going to make some strident plans to try and engage with those leaders of this community who are directly affected by our decisions and get them on side? Because currently I think there's still a major chasm between what we're proposing and what a good portion of members of the community actually want.
You're asking that of staff or the board?
Well, it's both, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Otherwise you throw the staff under the bus.
yeah, I don't want to throw staff under the bus. I want to see if I'm still here in 2 years' time. I hopefully will. That we've actually we meet our vision, we achieve it. And elected members come and go, but there's a community of people living around there and recreating around there and being part of the community who, if we get buy-in we can ensure this project will go ahead.
Isn't that what I just said before? With, depending on which plan we choose, that's about choosing the plan and then getting them to tie into, and I mean, there has been mention today about why is Ko-Fi not there?
Yeah.
And we sitting around this table, I can't talk to you guys, but I would agree with, you know, that I don't think this is an exhaustive list of what should be planted or what should not be planted as far as that. So I think that's open, and it even says, oh, that's in relation to the specific area, but I think, I don't think we're so hard and fast, well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think we're so hard and fast that it has to be one specific plant in one specific spot. I think that this is an evolving, I would like to think that with the community and the VCB, that this is an evolving plan, and that we get community buy-in, that we can have the trees and whatever things in these lists, plus some extra natives and things to go in there. Am I incorrect?
Well,
someone correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, we've got a recommendation here which relates to this, which is option B. Right? Isn't it? That's.
Do you want to bring the recommendations up?
Yeah.
It sounds like we want to.
So what did you have something to say?
So I think sorry, finish, Martin, sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, if this was option B, we can amend it now in the recommendation. So if we decide that we don't want poplar trees and we will send you away to do some more work. That I totally concur with what Tracy's saying, that we should be able to, you know, there's no Ko-Fi, and you know, mountain Ko-Fi is indigenous to this part of the world, and we should be encouraging more planting of that, because it is one of the few natives which actually does like growing here.
Citizenship, these are all Ko-Fi.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we'll be saying.
So
Before we go on amending anything, I'll just pass on to Roger, because he had a question.
Yeah. One thing that this plan or these things don't show is the vertical component of that land. It has a big difference between the lowest part, which is at the bottom of Aranui Road, up to the highest part, with pores and so on. Quite a complex landscape across the top, where plantings are shown along, or separating that from the area near the road, the line of cliffs. And so that provides the opportunity to have a different sort of planting adjacent to the road compared to on top. So you have the typical Central Otago landscape on top with the various plants that we've been talking about. But along by the road, we could have a decorative entrance to Alexandra. It could incorporate things like oaks and maples that would provide colour in the autumn, provide shade in the summer, and provide something that would be of interest to people coming into Alexandra from the south. It's quite distinct from the top, so it doesn't impinge on the native plantings across the top area of that reserve. It just occupies its own little segment down the bottom. And I think there's an opportunity there to make use of that diversity of plantings.
So just to respond to that, so I think if we recall, the plan is based on what we consulted the community with last year for opening an open plan. There wasn't another option of more urbanisation, which the board is on. So as Tracy said, this is I think what we'd like to achieve here is agreement with the concept that's here. We don't need to agree on every plant to go through every one and where it's located, because clearly when you're doing it, this is not a detailed planting plan, it's a landscape plan. Detailed planting plan will come later, or and probably wouldn't even need one for there because it would just be planting in groups. For Roger's question, so we haven't consulted, we didn't consult last year on the intensive planting along the state highway. I would think if we're going to do anything there, we would need to talk to Wakakotahi, because there are shading issues there now from those pine trees. And we wouldn't want to be creating that further on, you know, in the future as well. So there's some other issues to take in, and that would be a stage 2 or 3 as we go on through this project anyway. But I guess what we're trying to achieve here is that this broad acceptance of or adoption of this proposal, and then we can talk or more or consult more if we need to on plant species and whatever, just to tidy that up. And whether you want stuff near the water race or not, we can take it out as well. So I guess going through if the poplars are out and do we need any other shelter there, yes or no, or do we want to go to plan A, which is totally a native shelter belt, and we can put some coppice in there as well. Do we do away with the water race plantings and those sort of things in there? So that's where we probably want some feedback on.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that, some of the feedback I have, and granted it is limited, is around understanding that there will be some kind of future planting happening under there. The community, from my understanding, is looking into that. Obviously, the VCB approved the redevelopment subject to some plans being presented. So I guess from just to back up what Gordy's saying is, how do we make sure we're going in that direction of approving something that gets us to that level, and it can be flexible, plantings and consulting further with the community on the types of plants, where the location is around, is a shelter belt required or not? Probably a couple of key things we're taking out of here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Gordon. So the border planting you're looking for establishment, how does that fit time-wise in terms of when it actually provides benefit compared to your planting regime? As in, like you're saying 5 years to get that established, where in fact the planting regime is needed in year 1 to 3. How do they fit together?
Still not quite following.
So how long is it going to take for your, regardless of which option you have, for that to actually be effective as shelter compared to your planting regime, which is likely to be shorter regime, I thought.
So you're looking for growth times, Tony?
Sorry?
You're looking for growth times?
Yeah, I'm saying if it takes 5 years to get an established shelter, but we're going to be planting everything inside 3 years, it's of no use at all.
Oh, yeah. So the native plantings would be 2 to 5 meters in about 10 years.
Yeah, and how's that line up with planting with the rest of
The
the
poplars would be 3 times that line over that time period.
And how does that line up with the planting across the rest of the block?
Well, they will be they're not for shelter, they're just group plantings, they're greater than shrub plantings. So they're just going to grow as native areas, I think, more like. Yeah.
So they're not providing shelter.
No, they're just providing habitat really for the lizards and other things up there. Yeah.
As does the rest.
Yeah. So they're not shelter, they're more habitat enhancing.
And so to help me, what your landscape picture telling me and what I'm seeing, I might be construing it, but we've got 80% cover now, and that says they've got 20% cover and 80% free. That's what the picture tells me.
Yeah.
What is that? What you're thinking? What's happening?
So that's the open central target landscape option. Yeah, and the grey shrubs over time will spread across that, out through that site, as you would expect natives to do.
So
yeah,
so
it's a long term. It's a long game. It's not a short game. You're going to put, and I guess you're seeding those green areas. We plant in the middle with plants, and over time they will slowly, as the site, they'll slowly spread out as they seed, and the birds spread around. The birds bring out other native seeds and feed and all that sort of stuff.
And you're expecting a bit of weed.
And council, like everything you do, pull out whatever it needs to pull out, if it's rose bushes or.
Sorry, guys, I'm just looking.
Yeah.
I'm going to check in with Di and see if he's got anything.
No, I was pretty much what Tracy was just noting the block issue.
Okay. So we thought I saw stuff, could we move recommendation A? So I don't forget. Which says that we received the reports. Everybody vote? Martin, Joe, seconder?
Yeah.
Roger, all in favour? Against, that's carried. I do want to jump over to Martin because I think you may have had new to this.
Well, I think it's option A because we don't want the poplars, because that's really the only major difference, and I can understand looking at both options is that option option A doesn't have the poplars, but we'll ask Gordon to look at what other trees need to be planted which are fast growing to offer the windbreak and protection that the residents seek along that boundary line. Being conscious of the fact that boundary line gets very close to people's houses because of just the way boundary lines and people's properties exist on Central Otago. I'm still a little unclear of what we've heard earlier today regarding the water race and the plantings around that how that's not going to interfere with the operation of the water race. Gordon, you made a comment before. I still think there's value in having plantings around that, but we need to do a bit more homework of whether it's A, allowable, B, feasible.
Well, it's allowable, there's rules.
Yeah.
So we would need to comply.
That's right, okay, fine. So we are conscious of the fact.
We want to go.
Is there are rules, yeah, right, that they would not encroach onto the race, that race will get access to it, fine. So plantings outside that area, not a problem. If then I'm quite happy, I think, to move A as it stands with an acknowledgement of the factors that do I want it to come back here again? Do we need it to come back here again? No. I'm thinking out loud. Yeah.
We've heard it.
We've heard it. So is it A or is it B? Is it B with the removal of the, give me some steer here, people.
Do you want to A?
It's A.
A, but with pin oaks and other bits and pieces that Gordy mentioned before is to be put in there for shelter as opposed to poplars.
Yeah.
Because you're still getting the natives in front, but you need something back there which is going to grow slightly quicker, but it's not poplars.
Yeah.
Well, that's B, isn't it?
But yeah, that's more B.
Is that more B?
So what you're saying, Martin, is that you would prefer option B without poplars,
Without poplars.
and that we're instructing Gordy to go back to find a more suitable and
Direct
Yeah.
staff to.
a direct staff.
With
That's much better than, thank you.
Yeah, the local community.
Yeah.
So if this is B, would that mean that still be an exotic tree? And yes, I wanted to get something in there for the long-term planning about their removal in years.
Yeah.
So I think, do we add in Tracy's piece around, I guess leniency given towards trees that do not have to come out in 8 to 10 years? The ideal is for them to be able to stay in for their lifespan. Is that?
Yeah, and I'm really conscious that people are very emotive about trees.
Yeah.
And one neighbour might love having a Leyland cypress fence.
Yeah.
Another neighbour might say, you guys said in 8 to 10 years it's going to be gone, and I've been hanging my hat on that.
Gotcha.
And we can't say who's going to be up there in 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think we need to make a decision whether it's going to be open. If it's going to be open, then it's like Martin said, it could be relitigated around this table.
Yeah.
Or we say it comes out and it's purely there for to allow the others to be established.
Yeah.
So Martin, your motion, you want to add it in there?
Yeah. Previously development of the, with consultation of tree options with the local community.
Shelter tree options.
Yeah, shelter.
Shelter tree options.
This is what it's been written, Roger?
Do we want to specify that it's an indicative plan rather than it's totally incompetent? Because there are lots and lots of spaces there that are being for units.
Yeah.
There's one other big omission, I think, in terms of the social amenity that it's currently provided for the last 10 years with Christmas shows and all. I can't see who's going up there in the next 10 years with the young kids for an hour a day in January and middle of the afternoon because there's no shelter there.
Precisely. So
Well, decision been made. Yeah. So we're not gonna bring that up at the moment because we're already, trees are going. So decisions already been made. This is just around.
Just think if it's indicative, I'm thinking of the things that we need to indicate we're interested in.
Yeah. Okay, so, one of the key things around the exotics is the fast growing nature of them. And that they will grow even faster than natives, is, I guess, some of the feedback that we've had. And so with, just through the chair then, with B, approved redevelopment plan of option B for the Half Mile Reserve with consultation on shelter tree options along the boundary and within the key walking areas. So there are some key pathway areas and things the community have used. Yeah.
Anything like that, Michael? Yeah. Is that where we put something about water and plan?
Yeah. Okay, I'll just let me see. Okay, yeah.
Any more on statement, Martin, or are you happy with that?
Martin, from a consultation point of view, the local community in the area. Specifically.
Yeah, I'm just, I wonder, just by saying consultation, what, are you opening a can of worms by saying that it needs to go out, or can we make it more specified?
Option.
Through the chair, consultation and the
formal process.
The process of formal
Engagement.
So maybe say with engagement.
Yeah.
Engagement
With the
and
local
discussion.
community, engagement with the local community on shelter.
Members of the order, have you got anything?
Yeah, with the community.
Okay, just with community, just with community.
Because that could be, the local, the local trust.
Yeah.
Trust, those plans can could be anybody.
Yeah.
It's not just the neighbours, it's also like firehouse.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
The other groups out there. Yeah, right, so we've now got B, and so Martin will move that as it currently is.
I'll second.
Okay, what's the step in that? All in favour? Aye. Against, and that is carried. That moves us to recommendation C.
I think we could actually include all three of those recommendations. That's when I moved A, I would B and C and D include, because there's no major changes to those.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to do that then?
Yeah, so we'll show that to moving A and B, C and B.
Yeah.
Together, so Martin's moved that, I think Roger's seconder, and in favour. Aye. Against, and that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to item 23.3.5, the news report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, all the members. And just in the time since we've met, things that I've done specific to Vincent, 27th of March, met with Fiona Dugan, who's the National Director of Hospital and Specialist Services. Met with her at Dunstan Hospital and just basically emphasised the importance of Dunstan Hospital to our community whilst looking more longer term for the needs of Inland Otago as a whole. 28th of March, attended the Blossom Festival AGM where, to my amazement, my wife volunteered to go back on the committee, having had a year sabbatical. So should be a thorn in Martin's side is good. 6th of April, attended the Central Otago Leaders Group, which is just a group that's CEOs and various leaders in the community that came together during the COVID pandemic and just meets occasionally just to touch base and see where everything's at, social services, education, the whole lot's really good group. 9th of April, attended the Clyde Wine and Food Festival, which went extremely well. It was wonderful. 12th of April, I had a meeting with the new CEO of Central Lakes Trust, had a citizenship ceremony 2 days later in this very room, always a wonderful occasion. Great to come along to if you've got spare time. If anyone's welcome just to come and sit and watch. It's really finding the stories of the people who have come here are just, yeah, quite remarkable. 26th of April, attended the CoLab Business Breakfast where a gentleman talked us through ChatGPT, which was interesting / terrifying. He put in, write a blog on Alexandra, New Zealand. The first thing it said was Alexandra is a coastal town, which we all laughed at. And then we thought, well, by world standards, we probably are. But from there it was, you wouldn't publish it, but you'd tweak it and you'd publish it. It was that close. And I had another talk on it today in terms of its effect on the potential for misinformation in the community to be even more targeted and deliberate, and yeah, really quite scary. And last week I had coffee and chats in Clyde and Alexandra. Alexandra was really interesting. I had a lady come to see me who was a carer for a non-verbal mentally disabled man of 18 years of age, and she pointed out, and that's why I love doing coffee and chats, because you find out about things you just don't see unless you think about it, that with her being a woman and him being a man, there's really nowhere for her to assist him with his toileting needs out in our public space. But miraculously, I've read our toilet policy. Yes, we do have such a thing for the council meeting the week before, and was able to confirm that any new toilets that we build will be unisex, and that includes what's going in the Alexandra Library. So that was useful. But and then coffee and chats at Michael and Beck's the day afterwards, and found out about the hockey turf, which has been dealt with by staff, so it's being attended to. And that's really been it, Vincent specific. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Just a comment on that ChatGPT, sorry. I actually typed, because I recently found out about it too, and I typed in there, write me a CODC fire permit, a fire application for a fireplace. And it wrote the entire application.
Yeah.
Just saying. Got your head around that one.
It was like it was.
Well, I haven't sent it in.
Oh,
It wrote me exactly what it pulled the application form off the website and wrote the wording. And it said, just insert the name of your fireplace. That's what it held.
One of the people there said.
It's very clever.
He was writing a CV or helping his daughter write a CV, so they put in her current, CV, just here's what I've done. But then they also did one of those, what is it, personality test things? Yeah, personality test things, and said, write a CV using this information for somebody of this personality type. I said it just told her story, it just couldn't follow them. It was amazing, eh? So it's a tool, but so's
watch the space.
Yeah.
The level of redundancy which is going through.
This time,
All right, does somebody want to move that we receive that report? Martin, seconder, Tracy, all in favour? Against, carried. Right, so it moves us on to 23.3.6, so the chair's report. So, me this week. So I also attended the CoLab meeting and heard about artificial intelligence and was absolutely amazed and terrified at the same time. It made my home speaker, the Google speaker, sing like it was students. Incredible technology. Held at the World Exhibition at Central Stories, which I haven't been. Definitely don't think it's only got a couple of days left.
Okay.
No, in the May.
Oh, in the May, sorry. When you're busy, that's only a couple of days. Later week at the Alexandra Anzac service, went to the tree planting at water treatment plant. Attended an ACOS meeting where one of the big concerns for the social services sector right now is getting housing for staff. A lot of managers are getting amazing applicants, but they have to turn them down because the first question I'll ask is, do you have a house here for accommodation? If they say no, that's it. So like most other sectors are really short staffed because of that. Spent some time walking up and down the street of St Athens a few weeks back, just chatting with residents and visitors, seeing what it is that they're wanting for their future in that area. So it was really interesting. Learned a lot about the work with Tim and Martin around their old power lines, the poles, and the power poles and the work done around saving those. So it was really, really fascinating. And that is me. So I will move that report be received. Do I have a seconder? All in favour? Aye. Against, carried. So that moves us on to movements reports, so we'll start with Roger.
Right, keeping Alexander Clyde beautiful AGM, some of that, well attended. I looked up the plantings at the Lower Mandeville Reserve, involves watering and just picking things out. They're planted by the volunteer group. I chaired a meeting of the Creative Writers Circle, chaired a meeting of the Central Otago District Arts Trust. I took part in the same planting session at the water tank on the Clyde Hill. That was run by organised by Copenhagen and really went extraordinarily well. And I think is great that we can say to people who complained about the tank as an eyesore that, right, here's what we're doing about it, and in a few years' time you won't see it. Attended official opening of the World War I exhibition at Central Stories Museum. David and I met with Chris Winter at the Half Mile Reserve to discuss various planting options. Attended the AGM of Central Otago Reef. I was very saddened to hear of the Alexandra Waste Busters has been closed, and there's been a huge public reaction to that. And I'm informed with the Central Otago Regional Orchestra in Roxburgh and in Wanaka, but not here in Otago. That seems like, of course.
Not too much for me, but yeah, it's just been another really busy 6 weeks since our last meeting, with what I do out of the golf course, welcoming all our visitors. We've had lots and lots. And we've just got a working group meeting next week in Reynolds Cottage to have a bit of a get together and organise a winter clean up there, and a few repairs to be done. That's me.
Martin.
I too attended the opening of the museum, the Anzac exhibition, which I urge everybody to get along and have a look at. I was at Anzac Day services on the 25th. Beautiful day, good numbers, and that cannon, which the RSA guys fires, scares the bejesus out of here, because God, it makes me ready. The other big thing, of course, is we've started this hearings panel. We've started hearing Plan Change 19. We've had our first full week of hearings last week, and more to come, and 197 submissions. We will be tied up with that for a number of weeks. Coming up, we're hearing the castle on Unsku Station, and that's going to be another interesting one too. There's about 77 submissions in favour of that too. So, and my understanding is work is in the planning area is not slowing down one iota. But the hearings have been, it's going to be interesting. And just the, currently what we're seeing is two camps. One would want the status quo, one doesn't. So it's going to be very interesting when it comes to making the decisions, which way that baby is cut. Yes, that's me.
Martin, Tracy.
Like other members, I attended the tree planting in Clyde. It was actually a really great day for learning, so I thought that was really, I thought it was great. And I too am looking forward to seeing the progression of those plants. I did actually request that Fulton Hogan take a photograph from the same spot every year so that they can do a progression over the years just to show you how things are looking. So that's really great. I laid a wreath in Omakau at the Anzac services. It's quite a unique attendance out there because we do it on the road, outside the hall. And interestingly enough, I know we're on a state highway, but we are in a 50k zone, and the majority of drivers are great because there's a lot of small children, and you know it's a really great feeling, and it's really lovely to see all the kids' art in the hall. put in there, so it was really special. I chaired a co-ink meeting. We meet once a month, as many of you know, so I've chaired that, and then we also had there was an informal catch up with some QLDC councillors, pardon me, and it was really great just to chat informally about, the similar things and what learnings we can have across our districts with our neighbours.
Thank you.
Ditto on Anzac, I laid recently applied Memorial, same story, a lot of young kids there, which is a good balance with the receding hairline and wide parts of the servicemen and probably even the White Fire Brigade too, to be clear. There's a smattering of young people in there, which is good. Good turnout. AGM for the Blossom Festival with Martin, and applied one too, which golf treat. Pretty slow starting in terms of commitment from stall holders, and predominantly around staff, getting staffing. But slightly different format. They spread the wine and breweries out along the length of the street rather than concentrating one end, which seemed to ease congestion. Great night.
Thank you, Tony. Does somebody want to receive those reports? Okay, second to Martin, all in favour? Against, carries. So it moves us to 23.3.8 on page 88, the governance reports.
Well, there's nothing in particular to comment on, except for the fact that we're going to change them around in the next meeting. So the latest entry is first.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are there any questions or comments around the governance report?
The only comment I'd make is they are very hard to read on these machines.
Hopefully, switching them around will make it a little easier.
Yeah.
But that's just part of my gripe about these machines.
Noted.
Can you take that? Too, so it'll be noted where it counts.
I'll let the folk who make this session.
Thank you.
Get your prescription screen cover now.
It's like we used to have the gold black and white TV set, you can come up with colour. Thank you. I'll move those confidential those reports taken as read.
The governance reports?
Yes.
Tony is a second. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Right.
Those are the governance reports.
Yes. Right, so the date for the next meeting is the 19th of May.
That's
2 weeks.
That's 2 weeks.
Yeah, indeed, it is, yes. That is for annual plan hearings. And I imagine, although I don't know for sure, I imagine that with item 1B, one of the key things that whole section will take place.
You'll need to know.
Can confirm, yeah, I'm still nice and mind, we're not going to get into things. We're just going through figuring out if there's other things that we make.
Pretty straightforward.
It shouldn't take I think we've got 3 hours. Allocated, it will depend on the number of submitters, which was submitters, sorry, that's not to be heard. Okay. 2 minutes.
No, it's
Next one, please, leaving union winners.
the proper one. This one's the 12th of June. All right, so that moves us on to the resolution to exclude the public for the reasons given on page 110. Put Martin's move that, seconder. Tony, all in favour? Against, and that is carried. Thank you.
If we please.